Anything Ghost, number 330. Welcome to Anything Ghost. My name is Lex Wall. Anything Ghost is a place where people share their true personal experiences with ghosts or local ghost legends, among other true paranormal things, and I share them with you on the show. If you have something to share, don't hesitate. Send it to lex@anythingghost.com. Not much in the way of personal stories this time, but I have something else planned for you, so stick around. Okay, and we're going to kick things off with a story from George in the U.S. The Juju Man, Kenya, 1978. We had been living in Nairobi for 4 months and decided to leave town for a weekend trip to the Ark Lodge. It had been a hectic pack-out and transfer to the U.S. Embassy where I served as an attaché. My wife and I needed a break. The Ark was a well-known game lodge built high in the trees in the Aberdeen forest. Another better-known lodge in the area is named Treetops. At both lodges, animals would be lured to the camps by baiting. Spotlights at night would shine over the bait, and the various animals would come to feed. It was a photo shoot event only, as hunting big game had been outlawed many years before. The Treetops Hotel was more famous because it was a place where a princess went up one night and came down as a queen the next morning. In 1952, Queen Elizabeth II of England, then a princess, stayed at Treetops. During the night, her father, King George VI, died. So the saying. As part of the Ark package, we lunched at a 2-story colonial house on a foothill outside the forest. It was the rendezvous point for the tourists taken to the lodge. After the lunch, the tourists visited a corral that had been set up adjacent to the house. The corral was 1/3 of an acre in size and had a dozen tribe members selling trinkets to the tourists. The tribe members were Kikuyu, as the Aberdeen was part of their ancestral homeland. The Aberdeen was also the stronghold of the Momo, mostly Kikuyu fighters, who waged guerrilla war against the British colonists in the 1950s. I recall seeing domestic animal skins, beadwork, and other tourist tchotchkes for sale. It was the same stuff we could buy any day at the Nairobi market. This was strictly a tourist trap, and we didn't buy anything. Well, sort of. There was a tribe member in his late 60s or early 70s who caught our attention, but his age was difficult to determine. He spoke no English, and helped by another man, much younger, with interpretation. The older man was a witch doctor or shaman named Juju Man. All the same nonsense. The Juju Man was wearing a traditional piece of cloth wrapped around his body, and was otherwise unremarkable in appearance. There were no frightening masks or makeup, or other theatrical effects one would see in the movies. The interpreter was wearing Western-style clothes, slacks, and a button-down shirt. For about $1 or $2, we could have our fortune read. And while we knew it was all a swindle to earn a bit of money from the gullible tourists, we agreed. After all, the cost was equivalent to about 25 cents. The Juju Man removed a small leather pouch from his person and shook the bag. He opened it and dumped the contents on the ground in front of us. The items I remember were bone and stone bits, and there were about a dozen items in total. He spoke to the interpreter, who, in turn, said that we had a child with a deformity. Yes, deformity was the word he used. He then cupped his elbow with his hand. Stunned, we told him he was wrong. My only son, Michael, was an infant, and he was with us and did not have a deformity. The interpreter asked if anyone in the family had a deformity, next pointing to his leg. We replied with an emphatic no. The Juju man had struck out. The interpreter simply shrugged his shoulders as if to say, well, maybe the old man doesn't get it right all the time. We thought nothing more of the Juju man's reading of his pouch contents. That was until my second son was born 5 years later. The delivery room nurse immediately brought to our attention the large hemangioma on his elbow, a bulging collection of blood vessels. The pediatrician assured us that as he grew, the blood vessels would naturally absorb back into his elbow. He was correct. I had never told anyone the story about the Juju man we met one day in Kenya in 1978. All right, again, that was from George in the U.S., and it seems the Juju man had predicted a future deformity in one of his children. And thanks again, George. And here's a creepy story from Joe in Massachusetts. Apartment number 3. There are many strange and frightening stories about the town of Fairhaven. I have heard this from my friend and college roommate, who I will call Dan. Fairhaven is a small, quiet, rural town located in a weird valley. The townies call it a hollow. A lot of what he told me sounded like bad folk tales, and so I thought nothing of it. And also because I lived in a city with my girlfriend over 600 miles away. However, about a year ago, I had a stretch of bad luck. My girlfriend of 5 years broke up with me shortly after I'd lost my job. We had been arguing quite a bit about money and marriage. Losing my job was pretty much a straw that broke the camel's back. She kicked me out about 2 weeks later. I had no place to go, and I knew no one nearby. My pride wouldn't let me move in with my family, especially since we had a huge falling out over my now former girlfriend. Dan was nice enough to let me move across the country and into his small 2-bedroom apartment until I got back on my feet. The apartment building was older but nicely kept. There were 4 apartments in the building, all in a row. Each apartment was on the 2nd floor and could be accessed by only one of 2 stairways. We lived in apartment 2, and for about 3 months, everything was good. I finally found a job working first shift at a local gas station, while Dan continued to work third shift at a local pet food factory. Often I had the apartment to myself in the late evening after Dan left for work. I usually arrived to the apartment after work through the garage. Our neighbor from apartment 1 usually arrived at the same time as me, and we usually exchanged pleasantries as we both climbed the stairs to our respective places. He was a nice, nondescript fellow that lived alone across the hall from us. Despite the incredibly thin walls, I hardly ever heard anything from his apartment, except for the occasional clanging of pots and pans, and heavier than usual footfalls close to what I assume was his bedtime. The apartment on the other side of our apartment, apartment 3, was always quiet, because it was vacant. At least that's what Dan told me. However, I began to doubt this after a couple of weeks into month 4. My bedroom, the living room, and the kitchen all shared a wall with apartment 3, which was quiet most of the time. It was only after I had gone to bed that I began hearing noises through that wall. Or rather, in the wall. One night, as I settled into bed, I heard a noise that I thought came from inside our apartment. Dan had gone to work about an hour before, so I was sure that it was not him. As I listened more intently, I realized that the sound was echoing from the opposing wall in my room, making it sound like it was coming from outside the room. The sound was coming from the wall next to my bed. I had been lying with my back to that wall, so I turned over to face it. The sound was crisp but low. It sounded like something sharp being dragged against stone. My immediate thought was that it was a mouse inside the wall, but the sound was too intermediate and deliberate. All of a sudden, I had the sensation that there was someone on the other side of that wall. The sound was a scraping of plaster, like someone was trying to make a hole in the wall. I listened for an hour, as the scratching noises were coming from just above my head, until it suddenly stopped. I kept listening for about 20 minutes, but everything was silent. I eventually drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I asked Dan about the people in apartment 3. Dan had just come from work and seemed annoyed that I asked him a question to which I already knew the answer. "The apartment's empty, you know that," Dan sighed. "Oh, I know," I answered. "But I'm sure I heard someone picking at the wall in my room." Dan suggested that a mouse was the source of the noise, and I decided to drop the subject and let him sleep. But the entire day at work found me preoccupied with what happened the night before. Eventually, I forgot about it during the course of the day. When I returned to the apartment, I greeted my neighbor as usual, and we climbed the stairs together as usual. But instead of making small talk, I decided to ask about apartment 3. He told me that as long as he had been living there, no one had ever lived in the apartment. A person moved in there once, he seemed to recall, but it only lasted a couple of days. I thanked him, and we separated at the top of the landing to go to our respective apartments. The apartment felt unusually cold, but I ignored it. I made dinner, watched a bit of television, then went off to bed. I sat for quite a while, waiting to hear the scratching on the wall. But there was nothing but silence. I don't remember when I fell asleep, but I knew when I began to dream. In my dream, I was sitting upright in my bed in the dark. The wall next to my bed was gone, and I was looking into a room that was the mirror image of my bedroom. There was no furniture, but there was some light coming through the window at the far end of the room. It was then that I noticed a dark shape of a person standing near the door of the other bedroom. The figure was impossibly tall and thin. The head nearly touched the ceiling. I felt it was staring at me, although I could see no eyes. In fact, there were no features at all, just a deep blackness that stood in the shadows of the room. I felt a cold dread because I knew somehow that it meant to harm me. I screamed as I saw it move slowly through the darkness toward me. I awoke with a start, sweating profusely. The wall next to my bed was just where it had always been. I knew that it was only a dream, and I began to calm down. It was then that I realized that my heavy breathing had concealed the sound I had hoped I wouldn't hear. Sure enough, there was a faint scratching on the other side of the wall. I sat stock still, making sure that I was fully awake. I was, and the sound was still there, still persistent. I drew up the courage to jump out of bed, grab my keys, and ran out of the apartment to my car in the garage. I drove around for hours trying to process what was happening. Once the sun rose, I went back to the apartment, gathered my clothes, and left. My friend Dan called me later that day and asked if I was all right. I told him that I would never set foot in that apartment again, and that I would send for my things later. I told him what was in my dream, and that it lives in the apartment next door. He said I was crazy, and hung up the phone. I found my own apartment 3 weeks later, but I lived out of my car until then. Dan never had any experiences in the apartment. However, he did ask me about the quarter-sized hole in the wall right over where my bed used to be. And that was a story from the Anything Ghost archive. It was from episode 198, October of 2014. And that was the big 3-part Anything Ghost Mega Macabre Halloween special. And if you'd like to get your ears on the Anything Ghost complete archive, you need to join the Anything Ghost VIP group. There's a one-time membership fee, and you'll have access to everything that was put out. And that's thousands of ghost stories like you just heard. Well, not all just like that, but similar maybe. And those one-time membership fee, go to anythingghost.com, join VIP, anythingghost.com, join VIP. And this was a newspaper article back from England in 1930. And I'm just calling the reading Haunted England. This Christmas season finds Britain experiencing an unparalleled boom in ghosts. Innumerable new ones are reported from all over the country, while during the last 6 weeks, most of the old established ghosts have been reported on the job. Anne Boleyn has gone wailing down the haunted corridor at Hampton Court. The little old lady in black, who once frightened a man to death, he lies in the burial ground of the adjunct church, is again haunting Rufford Abbey. The Duchess of York's forefather, Earl Beardy, Lord of Glamis, who died in 1454, is prowling his ancestral castle. Bishop Roger of Salisbury has been seen stalking the ruins of Sherborne Castle, as has been his wont for the last 9 centuries. Abandoning conjecture and speculation, let me draw you closer to these haunted castles environed amid drear landscapes, these spectral corridors in the guest wings of ancestral mansions, these rambling old houses surrounded by gnarled trees through whose bare branches the storm winds sound like screaming voices, filling the folk around the fire within with unnamed apprehensions. It is difficult to make a choice among so many spooks clamoring for attention, but we might do worse than to start at the top of the social tree with the Windsor Castle ghost, which was one of the first to bob up this year. The story breaks in November with the screams of a housemaid in a corridor off the blue drawing room. The king and queen had left the day before for Buckingham Palace. A footman came running and found the girl in a faint on the floor. When she recovered, she asserted that a huge white figure had suddenly loomed at her from the recesses in the wall as she went peacefully along with her feather-dusting whisk. It had made a menacing rush at her. Common sense suggests a curtain blown in an abrupt gust of wind, except that this corridor was an inner one without any windows. Some skepticism is expressed by authorities on the ground that, although the king's huge old castle on the Thames side at Windsor is notoriously haunted, all the spooks are well-known and well-defined ones, and there is no record of an undefined shape more than life-size, nor is there a recorded instance of any of the castle ghosts being so ill-mannered as to offer violence, particularly to an inoffensive menial at lowly station. King Charles I and Queen Elizabeth are the two most regular apparitions at Windsor. The late Empress Frederick has left it on record that she was reading in the library during the day and became aware of somebody else in the vast chamber. She looked up to see the figure of a cavalier standing by her side. His face, she said, bore a strong resemblance to pictures of the unfortunate Stuart king who had lost his head. The singular thing was that this cavalier was not carrying his head under his arm, as all the ghosts of Charles I are supposed to do. On the contrary, this ghost was calm and handsome, and in no way frightening, and after standing quite still beside her for a few moments, he vanished. Another frequent visitor to the castle, Princess Beatrice, aunt of the present king, on several occasions has seen the spirit of Elizabeth, the Virgin Queen, standing motionless on the terrace. On one of these occasions, the princess's black cat also apparently saw the ghost, for he took a sudden alarm and jumped out of the window and broke his leg. Then, there is a strong rumor, which the reporters so far cannot get confirmed or denied, that the ghost of Glamis Castle has not only appeared again, but is obstinately refusing to take himself off. Night after night, it is said, he visits the crypt of the castle. If you saw this old crypt, built of huge granite blocks, set with heavy pieces of old furniture, the bare walls hung with old clan shields, spears, claymores, and the heads of animals slain in chases of long ago, you would not be surprised that these people see ghosts here. This particular ghost is a family affair, and in the nature of a skeleton in the cupboard of the Duchess of York's family, a family more ancient than the King of England's. The legend, one of several, runs that the Earl Beardy, a notorious gambler and Sabbath breaker of the 15th century, lost Glamis itself to a barren guest at a card play in the crypt, and foully slew him to avoid paying the debt. Something thereupon happened, the exact nature of which is known generation after generation to only 3 living people, the living Earl of Strathmore, his heir, and the steward of the castle. The stewardship passes on from father to son. Legend again has it that on a certain night each year, and at a stated hour, these 3 men, who alone know the dark secret, visit the crypt at night, and there witness the sight of Earl Beardy replaying that card game with his ghostly companion. He is doomed to play on this night every year until the Day of Judgment. If there is anything in this story which excited the village of Glamis, the spectral Earl Beardy has either mixed up his dates, got tired of the crypt and started flitting about other parts of the castle, or is working overtime with the cards. The tales that came into London newspaper offices over the wires from Scotland were closely followed by news which took reporters and a couple of psychic experts up to the Elizabethan mansion of the Boynton family in Yorkshire. somewhat to the annoyance of the Boyntons, it appears, since these old families do not like exposing their private ghosts to the public gaze. The Boyntons, however, have only themselves to blame. So proud are they of the family ghost that they keep the gruesome relic which perpetuates its legend under a security-fastened glass case right in the entrance hall. The relic is a skull, and the skull is supported to be that of a former female member of the family. The lady suffered a terrible wrong which had never been avenged, and it is not likely to be avenged now, the perpetrator having died in his bed 300 years ago, and acts of vengeance against his great, and some more grandson are prohibited in this age. However, the lady insisted that until she was avenged, her skull should adorn the entrance hall to remind those who should have avenged her and did not of their everlasting shame. Passions have died down, and the original cause of the trouble being almost forgotten, a skeptical Boynton said, in effect, that he was tired of seeing the old lady's head lying about, and directed that it should be buried in the garden. That night, screams from the hall. The household rushed down. There lay the skull in the middle of the floor. It was silent now, but there was no doubt that it had worked itself out of the grave and rolled from the garden to the hall. It had been screaming to be restored to its proper place, and it would go on screaming if it were not humored. The frightened head of the household humored it. Some of the family said that an old family retainer, scandalized by his master's contempt for the legend and the curse, had dug up the skull himself and done the screaming. But that is by the way. The present story is that the skull has been screaming again. But why? No one seems to know. And anyone calling at the Boynton mansion in order to ask the question now is likely to meet with a hostile reception. Two of Henry VIII's wives, Catherine Howard and Jane Seymour, regularly haunt Hampton Court, the magnificent palace on Thames side between London and Windsor, which Cardinal Wolsey built for himself, but tactfully presented to Henry, when he found that the king thought him too grand and intended to grab it anyway. Both ghosts have appeared again this month. Catherine has been seen fleeting down one of the painted corridors, although she is supposed to always reenact at midnight the tragic scene that she actually played in real life when she unsuccessfully appealed to King Henry that she should not share the same fate as Anne Boleyn, who was beheaded. Anne herself has been seen no less than 4 times this season. The last person who claims to have seen her was a gentleman who was discovered in the haunted gallery at 10 o'clock at night, and he was handed over to the police. His story was that he was a spiritualist, and he had secreted himself in the palace to test the truth of the ghost legend. As he had no housebreaking tools and nothing was known against him, the magistrate fined him and let him go. He later told reporters that he had seen Anne, but he had been interrupted just as he was going to talk to her. She is London's most tragic ghost. On All Saints' Day in 1541, Henry VIII and his Queen Anne were kneeling together in the chapel at Hampton Court when Archbishop Cranmer slipped in silently and placed in the hand of the praying king the paper that the latter was expecting. The document containing evidence that was going to condemn her and clear Henry's path to his next marriage. The Queen was led away at once and locked up, but a day or two later, on November 2nd, she eluded her jailers and ran down the gallery where the king was once again at Mass. Just as she reached the door of the chapel, the soldiers caught her and dragged her screaming down the long gallery back to her prison. So every November, her despairing wraith returns to the scene of her agony and goes wailing along the old gallery, its flimsy white garments fluttering in the night air. Descending to spooks of the lower social strata, we may note that the restless spirit of Jean d'Anblot is walking again this year. Jean was a French sailor who was murdered by South Coast smugglers in the days of George III. He is an erratic visitant, and until this visit he had been quiet for 15 years. News of his walking brought a crowd of villagers, fishermen, and curious visitors from the great naval base of Portsmouth to the sinister caps a mile out, where he had been seen the night before. Reporters were present. At that spot, scene of a bloody murder, there is a gap in the line of the road lamps for a quarter mile, and the road is so gloomy that timid people give it wide berth on a moonless night. On this particular night, after a couple of hours had passed, a dog suddenly yelped. "Look!" gasped its frightened mistress. Everyone stared hard. There, in the center of the dark path of unlighted road, rose the tall, vague figure of a man. Some of those who saw it described it as a pillar of fog. At that instant, a car hummed up the road. Its headlights seemed to throw the ghost into high relief, but evidently the driver saw nothing, for he drove right through the specter, and when the dazed watchers looked again, there was nothing there. With two exceptions, no really alarming ghosts have walked into London so far this season. Odd this, when you recollect that the capital is sprinkled with very sinister old buildings, such as the ancient Tower, murmurous with the sighs of the condemned passing under the Traitor's Gate, the groans of prisoners in the west dungeons, the last gasps of noblemen and queens expiring under the headman's axe. And when you recall that many of the palatial new blocks stand on the site of old public gallows, or are built on the obliterated ruins of the wattle huts of the Boudica charioteers, the villas of armors who sweated over the repairs to armor of King Arthur's knights, the torture chambers used by old kings and robber barons in the process of avenging themselves. The most recent apparition in the capital is the temple ghost, a white dame who hovers uneasily over the graves of the Templar knights outside the old temple church in the enclosed legal quarter opposite the law courts in the Strand. They were sworn to chastity, those knights. The old Norman Brown, who peers from a quaint gallery in Chelsea at passers-by, very badly lit Chelsea, has also made his appearance on several occasions of late. Both, fortunately, are harmless. The exceptions are the tube ghost at the Tower of London and a mysterious visitant in the sedate Bloomsbury boarding house district. The Bloomsbury ghost announced his advent by rapping loudly on a landlady's bedroom door. On his next visit, he tore down a bookcase and threw it on the floor, and then suddenly appearing in the vacant wall space, flourishing ghastly bandaged arms and moaning. He was ashen gray and all head and shoulders. The old lady, thus rudely intruded upon, skidded into the street in her nightgown, calling for the police. She has since had a nervous collapse. A professional ghost hunter has spent a night in the room in hope of seeing the ghost again, and no doubt giving him a piece of his mind. But to date, nothing more fearful has happened than strange sounds and odd currents of chill air. Churches have been among the best haunted places in the island. One of the best authenticated stories in this field comes from All Hallows Church at Barking in the Docks district. The organ master had gone into the choir room for practice with one of the choir boys. The church door, incidentally, was locked, but the door to the practice room was left open. Through this door suddenly came in a queer little old lady in a silk gown and a poke bonnet. One of the boys politely placed a chair for her, and for a while she sat quietly listening to the singing. Then she rose and walked down the main aisle. Recollecting that the church door was locked, the organ master sent a boy down to let her out. But the boy came back saying that he couldn't see anyone. The old lady had vanished into thin air. She has reappeared several times since. Sometimes a black cat walks with her, but more usually she is alone. She never speaks. The first time that she had brought the cat along, the verger saw it and was about to shoo it out when it walked through the piano. He just lets it walk now. A host of witnesses testify to having seen in the Little Holy Cross Priory in Leicester, a big Midland manufacturing city, the ghost of a dead priest. The Reverend Norbert Wiley, who was a former priest of the Roman Catholic community, died 2 years ago in early middle life. The ghost figure of the prior, it is said, has been recognized and has spoken. According to witnesses, he has been seen kneeling by the high altar. He has been seen kneeling in the confessional box in which he used to hear his parishioners. He has visited the cloisters of the priory adjoining the old church and has flitted across the grass which lies between the old study and the church entrance. The most remarkable part of the visitation is the fact that all the apparitions, with the exception of one, have taken place in full daylight. Father Fabian Dix, the present prior, saw the apparition for himself. He was at the high altar when the figure of the priest, in the black and white vestments of the Dominican order, came from the sacristy and stood by his side. It was Father Norbert Wiley, 2 years in his grave. The dead priest looked straight at the prior and said, "Pray for me. I need your prayers and the prayers of my people." The prior, thereupon, from the pupil of the Holy Cross, begged the prayers of the congregation in the following terms: "In consequence of certain unexpected happenings that have taken place in Holy Cross Priory during the last 3 weeks, and which came to a climax this morning, a quarter of an hour before Mass, I ask you to pray for the soul of a priest who has passed over and is greatly in need of your prayers." The ghost of Minsden Church has been back for some weeks. Intermittent reports of his appearance kept coming in. He is famous, an old established spectre, over whom much controversy has raged. Mediums and psychics have gone to his old ruin by midnight, moonlight, and starlight to surprise him, and skeptical chemists have hidden in clumps of alder and waved worn greening magnesium lights to bamboozle the spiritualist. The ghost is supposed to be that of a priest who used his church for the satisfaction of carnal lusts, to be blunt, as a love nest. Thereafter the place was accursed, and the church finally abandoned it by order of the Bishop of Lincoln in 1750, after a great block of masonry had fallen from the roof and dashed the book out of the hands of a curate who was just about to start a marriage service. No one seems to know who the old ruin really belongs to now, but a well-known naturalist claims it by virtue of a few dollars paid year by year to the local vicar, who, in the absence of any other claimant, appears to be as good a owner as any. There, anyway, what is left of it stands. 'Tis now the raven's bleak abode, 'tis now the apartment of the toad. and there the fox securely feeds, and there the poisonous adder breeds, concealed in ruins, moss and weeds, while ever and anon there falls huge heaps of hoary, mouldered walls. An intriguing ghost couple appear to have settled in the ruins of the monastery of St. Helena at the Tameside village of Datchet. At night they sing in the Dimsey Monastery garden, and a black monk and a white lady have been seen to disappear through the old stone wall. According to local descriptions, the man is tall and attired in black from head to foot. He is hooded, and no one can say what horrible sight that hood veils. The lady is tall, too, and dressed in dazzling white. She doesn't wear a hood, she is hatless. They say in Datchet that the phantom pair have appeared since part of the ancient monastery was burned down some 2 years ago. But whether they were lovers in life long ago, or what mysterious tragedy they enacted in their earthly existence, no one can surmise. From a Devonshire house built in good Queen's best time comes the tale of door handles turned when no one is at the door, and bolted doors that open themselves. A local resident and her son slept there. Late at night, the mother was awakened by heavy footsteps that hurried along the corridor and went downstairs. She sat up in the bed listening. Again came the rushing footsteps, making the old stairs creak. The lady, a Mrs. Sanders, called her son, and receiving no reply, went into his room and found him asleep. Next morning the son told his mother that he had awakened 3 times to find his door open, though he got up and shut it each time. Investigation of the house records disclosed the legend of a man who had walled up a living nun in one of the rooms after chasing her at night through the corridors. Were the rushing footsteps and the intruder into the son's room the unquiet spirit of this wicked man living his ghastly deed over again? From the fox hunting districts come, besides some anticipated annual visitors, several new ghosts. Among them, a phantom horse, careening over the countryside around Wartnaby. This night, the rider is thought to be a ghost of a wild squire who, 100 years ago, was one of a madcap band of followers of the Cornhounds. The first person to see the rider and his spectral steed had the disturbing experience of having them both walk through him. Another hunting country spook, which has caused considerable general interest and local uneasiness, is an eye of doom, as big as an automobile headlight, which glows in the brow of a vague, vast shape that has been seen hovering over the tombstones in an old churchyard. I may also mention a glimmering hand, a white, beautifully shaped feminine hand, which has taken to drifting about a hunting squire's house, built on the site of Old Gallows, and has sent a well-known hunting woman into hysterics. What it is up to, no one can suggest. A good instance of the aimlessness of many of the ghosts reported this Christmas is the brown monk of the Seaforth clan of Scotland. He was definitely reported in December's first week, as seen by villagers near the stream, which turns muddy when a Seaforth is about to die. It was by this haunted stream that, according to family legend, Alexander III, King of Scotland, went hunting one day and was attacked by a mighty stag, but a youth suddenly leaped between and struck the stag's head from its shoulders at one blow. The family crest, a stag's head, perpetuates the legend. The king gave his savior a grant of land. Up went the Brayhan Castle, and the Seaforths, then the Mackenzies, the Seaforth title came later, were launched in the 400 of the time. Unluckily, one of them fell afoul of the church and got cursed. The brown monk who laid the curse said that there should come a deaf head of the clan with 4 great lairds with marked physical defects. And when this happens, the gift of the land of the family would be lost, and the line would become extinct. Centuries passed. The curse was forgotten. Then, the 21st chief of the Mackenzies lost his 4 sons, and, falling in debt owing to speculation, got his estate hopelessly involved. It was then abruptly realized that the curse was coming true. For Lord Seaforth was deaf, and 4 of his contemporaries bore marked physical defects. Sir Hector Mackenzie was buck-toothed. Chisholm was hair-lipped. Grant was half-witted, and Macleod stammered. Sir Walter Scott dug up the curse and authenticated it at the time. The line is now extinct. It therefore is a question what the apparition of the brown monk portends. Since the curse was worked out before this century began, the last Lord Seaforth, known for his affection for a tame cockatoo, which he carried about on his shoulder, died in 1923. One can only surmise that the monk has been hunting so long that he has fallen a victim to a habit complex, or else that the news service of the spirit world is defective. All right, if you're still with me, that's a rather long article that came out in 1930, and I found it enjoyable, so I thought I'd share it with you. And to close this episode out, I was going to do another one of those One Step Beyond episodes and play it for you. You know, it's a TV show that was that would act out supposedly true events, but like a lot of the stuff in what I just read you from that article, you can tell it's kind of urban legend stuff. But it was a creepy show. I always enjoyed it. And so I hope you enjoy this episode of One Step Beyond. It's called Dead Man's Tale. And I'll be throwing in narration of visuals that you need to understand what's going on. So here it comes.
Frontier town of Port Williams on the western seacoast of Canada. Jumping off place for the great lumber forests, the far northern gold country, and tonight, that realm where the impossible and the incredible are commonplace.
A hotel front desk man is leading a disheveled-looking man and woman up the stairs to their room.
The Port Williams Hotel. Rooms $1.25 and up to $2. But at this stage of their lives, $2 is important money to Jan and Philip Werris, because they've come to the end, the dismal end of a long-cherished dream. But for Philip Werris, tonight is also the beginning of an adventure beyond his wildest dreams, beyond belief. Yet, it happened.
Check out 12 noon, bathrooms down the hall. Thank you.
He throws the keys on the bed and the couple walks in the room. Philip throws his luggage on the bed and looks around.
Well, we've sure come a long way, haven't we?
I guess we can stand it here for one night.
Yeah.
Oh, Bill, not the end of the world. Anyway, what have we lost? 8 or 9 months?
That's not all we lost. We lost the farm, every dime we saved. You didn't even have enough money to buy a pair of shoes or dresses. That lousy flat we lived in for 3 years. Hamburgers or spaghetti every night, month after month.
You don't like my spaghetti?
Philip gives Jan a loving grin.
And I've given you nothing but a bad time ever since we've been married.
We stop? Ooh, Oh, you were a bust as a farmer. You're a darn good newspaper man. The Gazette will be very glad to have you back. You'll see.
Oh, sure. All I have to do is tell them I'm coming, and they'll arrange a ticker-tape parade around Dominion Square.
Why don't you go down and get the train tickets? The walk will do you good.
Because I don't have the money.
Unpacking, Jan looks back at Philip quizzically.
What?
I said I don't have the money.
What about the money from the farm?
Well, we didn't get $3,500 the way I said. We only got 28. 22 we owed on the mortgage, and the creditors got the rest.
You mean we're broke? Not even enough for a train fare?
Not even enough for this room for very long.
Oh, that's why you were so depressed. What are we gonna do, Phil?
I'll try to get a job. I don't know what, but we won't starve. Well, look, we will be able to save enough to get back to Montreal eventually.
Eventually? How long is eventually?
Look, I know I made a mess of things. Oh, baby, now please don't cry. We'll make out.
Okay.
Jan had been sitting during their conversation. She gets up and they both begin unpacking again. Jan bends over to pick up a book on the wardrobe closet floor.
Apparently the last tenant in this room had money troubles, too. He went right to the heart of the problem.
She tosses him the book, and he looks at the cover.
The Gold Miner's Handbook.
First thing tomorrow, I'll try to find us a place where we can fix our meals.
She notices Philip is instantly engulfed in the book.
Phil? Phil? What's so fascinating?
What?
That book you're staring at is over $1,000 bill.
I don't know. When I saw this name written here,
Larry Barton. So?
I don't know. Oh, screwy. Look, we better get finished. Go to bed. It's getting late.
He closes the book and throws it down.
Phil, I'm real sorry I made that fuss. Just I wanted to...
As Jan talks, Phil looks at the book again and is mesmerized. He picks it back up.
Phil. Phil!
What's the matter?
You tell me.
Tell you? What?
Phil, what is it? What's the matter?
Nothing.
A glazed look fills his face.
Nothing.
He quickly closes the book, throws it into the trash can, and looks around, confused. It's the middle of the night. Jan is asleep, but Phil is wide awake, typing. It's now morning. Jan walks in with a bathrobe on.
Get up. Boy, there's going to be a line at that bathroom door.
Phil gets up and yawns. Jan looks at what he was typing last night.
Port Williams, September 7th, 1960. Out of the gold country of the far north today came a shocking story of the corruption of the human spirit caused by the poisonous erosion of greed. Just 3 months ago, Lawrence Barton, 42, and his 38-year-old brother Robert took the train from Quebec to this west coast port town.
After purchasing gold mining equipment and supplies here, they embarked for Skagway. and there set out on horseback for the vast country of the Canadian Yukon. The club-footed Lawrence and his younger brother... Club-foot. That's laying it on a little thick, isn't it?
Maybe, but it's got a great start.
Oh, such modesty. Since when did you become a writer?
I didn't write this.
You didn't?
Are you serious?
Oh, wait a minute. I do recall waking up. Yes, I woke up suddenly, thinking about that gold miner's handbook for some strange reason. And I got out of bed, and I picked it out of the wastebasket. But that's all I remember. I don't recall writing anything or even going back to bed.
Boy, get into the shower and wake up.
Phil is in the background, and he pulls the book from the trash can. He puts the book down and quickly leaves for the shower. Moments later, he returns.
In the shower, I figured out what must have set me off.
Hmm?
Larry Barton, the name in this handbook. The brothers in that yarn are Lawrence and Robert Barton.
Jan is consumed by his writing.
It's an absolutely fascinating story, Phil.
What?
You still don't remember writing this?
Nope.
Don't you think this is a little strange?
More than a little. What can I do about it?
Boy, I know. You can finish it and send it to J.G. Carter. He'll buy this in a minute.
Look, he's a newspaper editor, not a publisher of fairy tales.
This is perfect Sunday supplement stuff.
Look, but it isn't true. I get myself in a fine fix sending in a hoax.
Well, who would care? You send the paper an exciting story, and we get the train fare back to Montreal.
Honey.
I'm serious, Phil. This is a darn good story. These two brothers traveling through the mountain country up north looking for gold. All the trouble they get into, and how they're lost and they haven't any food. I don't care what you say. This is just the kind of thing they want. Like this part here. Look. Where you say, actually, the mine is only 16 miles from the settlement of Riverton, only they don't know it. And with all this gold, they're starving to death.
Oh, brother.
There they are, just sitting there, thinking of nothing but that gold and hating each other. Each waiting for the other to make a move toward his gun.
What a situation.
How does it end?
Well, they kill each other naturally.
Oh, Phil, I'm serious. If you put an ending to this...
It ends. Where it belongs. In the wastebasket.
He grabs the ending and throws it away.
Now, any 5-year-old could figure that out. Look, that's what's wrong with it besides being a fake. I'm off.
He exits the room. Then we see him later enter the lobby.
Oh, Mr. Warren, the train just came in from the east.
Thanks.
The clerk hands Phil an envelope. He heads up the stairs back to the room, opens up the letter, and begins reading it. We see Jan cooking in the room, and Phil walks in.
What about this?
Hmm?
Take a look.
They bought it.
Brothers kill each other over gold discovery by Philip Warris.
How about that check?
Jan, I simply don't think...
Phil, listen, I cut out every reference to that clubfoot.
Read Carter's letter.
Says it's a first-rate job of reporting. He doesn't even object to the ending.
Keep reading.
A follow-up story?
Yes. They've already sent a man to Quebec to dig up background material on the Barton family. What do they think about the brothers who killed each other? And what about the mine? Who gets it? Don't you see the wonderful possibilities of exploiting this story? And they'll want pictures, too. Of the mine, of the bodies, of me. Oh, you're making a celebrity out of me. Do you know that? A fraud. Well, the least that'll happen, I'll never work for another newspaper as long as I live.
Sorry, I just didn't think of all those things.
I'll say you didn't think.
But I just wanted us to have enough money so I could get to a decent hospital.
Hospital? Jan, why didn't you tell me?
There's a knock at the door, and Phil gets up.
Hospital? Whatever possessed you to go...
He returns to talk to Jan, but goes back after the second knock.
Yes?
Mr. Wares? Philip Wares?
Yes?
I'm Mrs. Lawrence Barton.
Mrs. Lawrence Barton.
Yes, I don't want to intrude. I just want to thank you.
Thank me?
Yes, I suppose I knew Larry was dead. I hadn't heard from him in over 3 months. But I'd never have known what really happened if I hadn't read your story.
Mrs. Barton, please, come here and sit down.
Mrs. Barton takes a seat.
Mrs. Barton, your husband stayed in this room. Well, at least I think he did. And that's really all I know about him.
Well, I don't understand. Are you the Philip Wares who wrote this story?
Yes. I wrote it. But I made it up, Mrs. Barton.
What? Why are you lying to me?
I'm not. When we took this room, we found a book belonging to your husband with his name in it. And I unconsciously just used his name. But the rest was sheer fiction, believe me. Oh, Mrs. Barton, I know I did a terrible thing. An unforgivable thing. But it just never occurred to me that Larry Barton would have a wife somewhere. I just didn't stop to think.
Mrs. Barton, this is not his fault. It's mine. I sent that story in. You see, we needed money.
Oh, stop it! Stop it! Are you both insane, or do you think I'm a complete fool? I can't imagine why you're trying to do this to me. But I'm going to claim my husband's body, and Robert's too. And you'd better not try to do anything further to prevent me.
Mrs. Barton, please, wait a minute, wait. Now, Mrs. Barton, does your husband really have a brother named Robert? And did they go up north together? But what about the other things of the story? Well, I mean, they can't all be true. Their ages, their deep affection for each other.
Mr. Wares, what do you want of me?
Mrs. Barton, I don't know how to explain this to you. It's all an impossible, horrible coincidence. My husband did make up that story. So you see, your husband's probably alive. I'm sure he is.
Well, if he is, I'm going to find him.
Miss Barton, I'll help you. Believe me, if he's alive, I'll find him.
Please.
The scene moves outside. It's an old west-looking town, and an old jalopy and a woody pass each other on the dirt road in the center of town. A man on a horse gallops by. As the woody parks, and Philip steps out of it. He heads to a storefront. He enters an Old West-style market. Wooden barrels, dusty wood floors, and canned goods.
I do.
Oh, hello. Say, I wonder if you could help me. I'm looking for 2 men, brothers. Their name's Barton.
Never heard of them. What do they do?
Well, they're supposed to be up in this country prospecting for gold.
It's a mighty big country.
Yes. Well, can you tell me this? Is there any gold mining at all in this area? I mean, nearby, within 50 or 100 miles.
Never heard of any gold being found in this area.
Well, is there someone who knows for certain?
I'm also the government claims officer. Any gold found, the claim's got to be recorded with me or it don't belong to the finder.
I see.
The clerk is filing mail.
You know this country pretty well?
Been parking my feet on that there pot-bellied stove for the past 8 years.
I wonder if you'd be familiar with this at all.
Phil pulls out his typed-up story and begins reading from it.
Just 16 miles east of Riverton, they came upon their first sign of human habitation in more than 11 weeks. A miner's cabin on the south shore of a small heart-shaped lake. But there was no one in the cabin. They forded the shallow water and came upon a small one-man mine. Inside, they found the miner. He had been dead for weeks, victim of a rock slide when one of his shoring timbers broke loose.
Yeah, there is a little heart-shaped lake out that way.
There is?
Yeah, just about 16 miles east of here, too. I haven't been up there in a couple of years, but I don't think you'd find a cabin or a mine or not to mention a miner. I don't know what he'd be mining anyway.
Say, would you sell me a pair of field glasses?
Why, sure. Sure thing.
The scene moves outside. Philip is riding a horse on a trail beside a lake, ducking beneath pine tree branches. He pauses occasionally and peers through binoculars. He stops the horse at one point and peers through the binoculars, panning a hillside. He sees the beat-up old cabin, and he gallops toward it. Upon reaching the cabin, he parks his horse and goes inside the front door. Once inside, he stands and looks around. There's a small, messy bed and a picnic table. He hears a moan from the other room. He hurries in. There's a man tied to a wall.
You know what's Martin?
Robert,
Where's your brother?
in the mine.
Where's that?
At the other end of the lake.
He cuts him down.
Yes, I know where it is.
Richard falls to the ground.
Come on. I'll give you a hand into the bed. Come on. All right, here we go.
Phil walks him into the other room and puts him in the bed.
Be careful, he'll shoot. Careful.
Phil bumps into something as he's headed out.
Look, I'll go for help. I'll be back as soon as I can.
The scene again moves outside. We see Phil walking across rocks on the stream's edge. He continues hiking through the wooded area and comes to a cave, which is actually a hole in the ground, and it requires him to step down a ladder to get inside. He begins his way down the ladder.
Martin.
We see Lawrence Barton and he's sitting on the ground against a wall, holding a rifle on Phil.
Mr. Barton. Mr. Barton, your wife is very worried about you. Mr. Barton, I'm not going to hurt you.
He's sitting and just staring and holding the rifle.
Mr. Barton, your wife is in Fort Williams, and she wants...
Phil is right in front of him now.
Mr. Barton.
He's just staring into nothingness. Phil lightly pushes the rifle, and Mr. Barton falls to the ground.
Mr. Barton!
Lawrence Barton was dead. He was dead from cold and hunger. But as Philip West had written days before it actually happened, he was really the victim of the corruption of the human spirit caused by the erosion of fear, mistrust, and greed. The story that he had typed that night in some sort of psychic seizure turned out to be true. Only the ending proved to be inaccurate. He couldn't get that part from the mind of Lawrence Barton because it hadn't yet happened. What do you call this sort of fantastic occurrence? Well, it's sometimes almost impossible to label things accurately, particularly when we know so little about what we're trying to label. However, the scientists who study psychic phenomena have devised 14 separate categories, or 14 labels. They are precognition, possession, clairvoyance, and so on. And as research continues, more are being added. Is the story you've just seen, then, telepathy, or psychometry, or perhaps both? Or perhaps both and more? No one can say yet for certain. All that we can say for certain is that the story you've just seen is not fiction. It happened.
I hope you enjoyed Anything Ghost, episode number 330, and I'm putting together show number 331. Hopefully there won't be as long a wait in between episodes. But if you have a story you want to share, like a personal ghost story, paranormal experience, or a local ghost legend, like you heard some of them here tonight, today, whatever, good morning, good night, then send them to lex@anythingghost.com. And thanks, everyone, for listening to episode number 330. And until the next episode, have yourself a wonderful week and take care.